I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I spent 20 years as an investigative journalist chasing down corruption before retiring to open the city's most successful boutique art gallery. The morning light poured through the floor to ceiling windows of my kitchen, casting long, golden geometric shapes across the white marble island. I wrapped my hands around a steaming mug of dark roast coffee, letting the ceramic warmth seep into my palms. Across from me, my daughter-in-law Maya was humming a soft, unrecognizable tune while she whisked eggs in a large blue ceramic bowl. She looked impossibly young in her oversized gray t-shirt and flannel pajama pants, her dark curls piled messily on top of her head in a loose bun. I watched her with a swell of genuine affection that still surprised me sometimes. Mothers-in-law are supposed to be critical, overbearing, or at the very least, distant. But Maya was different. Since she married my son Leo 3 years ago, she had become the daughter I never had. She was gentle, artistic, and fiercely loyal to my son. We spent our Sundays like this. Leo usually golfing or traveling for his international finance job, and the two of us experimenting with brunch recipes and gossiping about the eccentric artists I represented. "Do you think Leo will land back in time for dinner?" Maya asked, pausing to brush a stray hair from her forehead with the back of her wrist. "You know him," I laughed, taking a sip of my coffee. "If the flight from London is on time, he'll be here. If there's even a hint of a delay, he'll be texting us from the lounge complaining about the Wi-Fi." The domestic tranquility was so thick I could almost taste it, sweeter than the cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. Then the phone sitting on the counter in front of me buzzed. It wasn't a text notification. It was a relentless, vibrating hum that rattled the spoon resting on my saucer. I glanced down. Leo FaceTime video. My stomach tightened instinctively. Leo never FaceTimed when he was at the airport. He was strictly a text-only traveler, focused on efficiency and getting to his gate. I swiped the green button and held the phone up, expecting to see his tired smile or perhaps a shot of a departure board showing a delay. Instead, the screen was a blur of motion. The camera was shaking violently. "Leo," I asked, my voice sharpening, "everything okay?" The image stabilized, but just barely. Leo wasn't smiling. He was crouched behind what looked like a large, metallic structural pillar in a busy terminal. His face was pale, his eyes wide and darting nervously to his left. He was breathless, as if he had been running. "Mom," he hissed, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Is Maya with you?" I frowned, confusion wrinkling my brow. I looked up at Maya. She was currently pouring the eggs into the sizzling skillet, completely oblivious to the chaos on my screen. "Yes, of course she is," I said, keeping my voice low so Maya wouldn't hear the panic in his tone. "She's making us omelets. We're in the kitchen." "Why?" Leo squeezed his eyes shut for a second, looking like he was about to be sick. "Mom, you need to look at this. Don't speak, just look." He flipped the camera view. The screen now showed the polished, high-traffic expanse of Heathrow Airport. I recognized the distinctive ceiling architecture immediately from my own travels. Leo was zooming in, the digital picture graining slightly before sharpening on a couple walking about 50 feet away from him. They were heading toward the exclusive first-class lounge, walking with a synchronized, fluid rhythm that suggested intimacy. The man was tall, wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that screamed money, his hand resting possessively on the small of the woman's back. But I didn't care about the man. My eyes locked on the woman. She was wearing a striking emerald green silk dress that clung to her figure, the back cut low to reveal her shoulder blades. Her hair was styled in sleek, glossy waves that cascaded down her back. It was a far cry from the messy bun in my kitchen, but the profile was undeniable. The curve of the jaw, the specific tilt of her head as she laughed at something the man said. "That looks just like her," I whispered, a chill running down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "But Leo, that's impossible. She's right here." "Wait," Leo whispered. "Just wait, watch her shoulder." On the screen, the woman in the green dress shifted her purse, causing the silk strap of her dress to slip slightly to the side. There, stark against her pale skin, was a birthmark. It was a distinct, jagged shape, reddish-brown, looking exactly like a small maple leaf. I stopped breathing. My investigative brain, dormant for 5 years, suddenly slammed back into gear. I knew that birthmark. I had seen it 100 times when Maya wore tank tops in the summer. It was unique, like a fingerprint. I slowly lowered the phone just an inch, my eyes darting from the high-definition nightmare in London to the cozy reality of my kitchen. Maya was standing 3 feet away from me. She had her back turned to the counter now, washing the whisk in the sink. Her gray t-shirt had a wide neck. As she leaned forward to scrub the bowl, her shirt shifted. There it was, the maple leaf birthmark, the exact same shape, the exact same placement on the right shoulder blade. I looked back at the phone. The woman in London turned her head slightly, and for a split second I saw her profile clearly. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was her. It was Maya. I looked at the woman in my kitchen. It was also Maya. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I felt a rush of vertigo so intense I had to grip the marble countertop to keep from sliding off the stool. This wasn't a twin. Maya was an only child. I had vetted her background myself before the wedding. Old habits die hard. She had no sisters. "Mom," Leo's voice was tinny and terrified through the speaker. "Did you see it? Mom, tell me I'm crazy." I stared at the woman washing dishes. She turned off the faucet and began drying her hands on a towel. She turned around and smiled at me, her face open and sweet. "Who's on the phone?" she asked cheerfully. I looked at her. I looked at the phone where her doppelganger was currently handing a boarding pass to the first-class attendant, the stranger's hand now interlocked with hers. "It's a telemarketer," I lied, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. I was Alina Vance. I had exposed senators for fraud and taken down crime syndicates. I knew when I was being lied to. But right now, looking at two identical women on two different continents at the exact same second, I realized I didn't know anything at all. I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I spent 20 years as an investigative journalist chasing down corruption before retiring to open the city's most successful boutique art gallery. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird, a frantic, bruising rhythm that echoed in my ears and drowned out the gentle sizzle of the frying pan on the stove. I gripped the cold edges of my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, threatening to crack the screen. I looked at the digital image of Heathrow Airport, then I looked up at the living, breathing Maya standing 6 feet away from me in my sun-drenched kitchen. The dissonance made me nauseous. "I'm going over there," Leo whispered, the audio on the FaceTime call cracking with a mixture of raw rage and devastation. "I'm going to confront them. Right now." On the screen, the camera jerked violently as Leo started to stand up from his hiding spot behind the pillar. "No," I hissed, the command sharp and instinctual. I kept the phone angled low, shielding the screen with my body so the Maya in my kitchen wouldn't see. "Leo, you listen to me right now," I whispered fiercely, my voice trembling but authoritative. "Stay back. Do not engage. If you walk over there, we lose the element of surprise. We lose the truth. The truth." Leo choked out, his eyes red-rimmed and wild on the tiny display. "The truth is my wife is in London with another man while I'm trying to come home to her. Keep the camera on her, I ordered, my investigative training overriding my maternal panic. I need details, I need proof. My chest felt tight, like a heavy stone had been placed squarely on my sternum. I watched the screen as Leo zoomed in again, his hand shaking so badly the image vibrated. The woman in the green dress was laughing now, throwing her head back in a gesture of pure, unadulterated joy. It was a laugh I knew. It was a laugh that had filled my dining room during Christmas dinner. Then she turned slightly to accept a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, and the light from the terminal ceiling hit her neck. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and dizzy. Around her neck hung a delicate gold chain featuring a teardrop-shaped emerald pendant. It wasn't just any jewelry. It was a vintage piece, Art Deco, sourced from a private estate sale in Vienna. I had bid on it myself. I had wrapped it in velvet and gold paper. I had placed it in Maya's hands for their third wedding anniversary just 2 months ago. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring at the edges. She's wearing the necklace, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Leo, she's wearing the emerald. I know, Leo sobbed, the sound tiny and tinny. I bought the matching earrings, Mom. I know exactly what she's wearing. Panic began to rise in my throat, acrid and hot. If it was just a doppelganger, just a freakish coincidence of genetics, that would be one thing. But the necklace defied logic. The necklace meant this was impossible. I slowly lifted my eyes from the nightmare in London to the domestic scene in front of me. Maya was plating the omelets now. She sprinkled fresh chives over the yellow eggs with delicate, precise movements. She was wearing the oversized t-shirt that belonged to Leo. She looked so comfortable, so grounded in this reality. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to see her eyes up close. I needed to make sure I wasn't having a stroke. Maya, I said, my voice sounded ragged, like I had just run a marathon. She didn't turn around immediately. She was sliding the spatula under the eggs. Almost ready, Alina, I hope you're hungry. I need. I swallowed hard, forcing moisture into my dry throat. Can you pass me the salt, please? It was a stupid request. The salt cellar was closer to me than it was to her, but I needed her to look at me. Maya turned. She smiled, that warm, crinkling smile that usually made me feel so lucky to have her in our family. Her brown eyes were clear and bright, reflecting the morning sun. There was no guilt in them, no duplicity, just the simple affection of a daughter-in-law making breakfast on a Sunday morning. Here you go, she said, sliding the heavy crystal shaker across the marble island toward me. Her fingers brushed against the cool stone. I stared at her hand. I looked for the wedding ring. It was there, a solitaire diamond on a platinum band. I looked down at the phone in my lap. The woman in London was raising her hand to brush a stray lock of hair from the mystery man's forehead. On her finger, the same solitaire diamond flashed under the harsh airport lights. Thanks, I mumbled to the Maya in my kitchen, my hand shaking as I reached for the salt. Is everything okay? Maya asked, tilting her head, her brow furrowing with genuine concern. You look a little pale, Alina. Is the telemarketer giving you a hard time? She took a step toward me, reaching out as if to touch my forehead to check for a fever. I flinched. I couldn't help it. My body recoiled instinctively, pulling back as if she were a ghost. I'm fine, I lied, gripping the phone so hard the edges dug into my palm. Just a headache, sudden migraine. Oh no, Maya cooed, her voice dripping with sympathy. Sit down, eat, I'll get you some water. She turned her back to me again to walk to the fridge. I looked at the phone. Leo was weeping silently now, hiding his face in his hand, crouched behind a steel beam 3,000 miles away. Leo, I whispered into the microphone, barely moving my lips. Don't lose her, follow her. Get on that plane if you have to. I don't have a ticket, he hissed back. Buy one, I commanded, watching Maya pour water from a pitcher. Buy a ticket to wherever she is going. Do not let that woman out of your sight. What about Maya? He asked, his voice broken. What about the one with you? I watched my daughter-in-law place a glass of water in front of me, her smile angelic and terrifyingly innocent. Leave her to me, I said, a cold resolve settling over my shaking limbs. I'm not letting her leave this house. I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I spent 20 years as an investigative journalist chasing down corruption before retiring to open the city's most successful boutique art gallery. I need to lie down, I stammered, pushing the glass of water away. The migraine, the light is too bright in here. Maya's face dropped into a mask of pure concern. She reached out again, her fingers hovering near my shoulder. Do you want me to help you up the stairs? I can close the blinds. No, I said too quickly. No, I just need dark and quiet. I'll go to my study. Please just finish your breakfast. I didn't wait for her answer. I turned on my heel and walked out of the kitchen, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. I forced myself to walk at a normal pace until I rounded the corner into the hallway. Then I ran. I bolted for the heavy oak door of my home office, threw myself inside, and engaged the deadbolt. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot in the silence of the house. I leaned my back against the wood, gasping for air, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I was safe. For now, I scrambled to my desk and woke up my computer. My fingers trembled so violently I mistyped my password 3 times. Come on, Alina, I whispered to myself, my voice shaking. Get it together. Finally, the screen flared to life. I didn't open the gallery inventory or my email. I opened a browser window and navigated to a URL that didn't exist on public search engines. It was a legacy subscription to a private investigative database, a tool I hadn't touched in 5 years. It cost me $2,000 a month to keep active, an expense my accountant constantly begged me to cut. Today it was worth every penny. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was Leo. Sent photo attachment 45 MB. Okay, I breathed, clicking the file. Let's see who you are. The image loaded on my 27-inch monitor. Leo must have used the telephoto lens on his professional camera because the clarity was terrifying. The woman, the other Maya, was blurry as she turned away, but the man holding her hand was in sharp focus. He was older, silver hair perfectly coiffed, a bespoke suit that screamed money, a scar running through his left eyebrow. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving my extremities numb. I knew that scar. Julian Vane, I hissed, the name tasting like poison. He wasn't just a rich boyfriend. Julian Vane was a corporate raider I had investigated a decade ago. He was a ghost, a specialist in hostile takeovers who used blackmail, identity theft, and manufactured scandals to destroy companies from the inside out. I had tried to nail him for fraud in 2014, but witnesses kept disappearing. If Julian Vane was involved, this wasn't an affair. This was an operation. My fingers flew across the keyboard, now muscle memory taking over. I needed to look at Maya, not the Maya who liked watercolor painting and volunteered at the animal shelter. I needed to look at Maya unaware. I typed in her maiden name, Maya Volkov. I pulled her standard background check, the one I had run before the wedding. It was clean, born in Belarus, adopted at age 4 by an American couple in Ohio. Parents deceased. University of Chicago graduate. But Julian Vane didn't target clean people. He targeted people with cracks in their foundation. I bypassed the standard checks and dove into the international archives. I used my old credentials to access the Belarusian state orphanage records from the late 90s. It took 10 minutes of agonizing loading bars and translation software. I heard footsteps outside my office door. I froze. My hand hovered over the mouse. Elena. Maya's voice came through the wood, muffled and sweet. I brought you an ice pack for your head. My heart stopped. I stared at the door handle. It jiggled. I'm fine, I called out, my voice shrill. Please, I just need to sleep. Okay, she said. I'll leave it by the door. I waited until her footsteps faded away before I looked back at the screen. The file had opened. It was a scanned document, yellowed with age, stamped with the seal of a defunct orphanage in Minsk. There was a photo attached, two toddlers, identical dark eyes, identical button noses. Holding hands, my stomach dropped to the floor. There wasn't just one girl. Name Maya Volkov, DOB, 12 May 1996. Name Katerina Volkov, DOB, 12 May 1996. Twins. I scrolled down frantically, my eyes scanning the Cyrillic text, relying on the translation overlay. I was looking for adoption records for Katerina. I needed to know where she went. I found the entry at the bottom of the page. It was stamped in red ink. Status: deceased. Date: 14 November 2001. Cause: structural fire. I stared at the word deceased until the letters started to blur. Katerina Volkov died in a fire 20 years ago. There was a death certificate number. There was a burial plot listed in a pauper's cemetery outside Minsk. But dead women don't fly first class to London wearing my emerald necklace. I looked at the photo of the toddlers again. I looked at the photo of Julian Vane, a man who specialized in stealing lives. A horrible, chilling realization washed over me. Katerina wasn't dead. She had been erased. Someone had pulled her out of that fire, or perhaps set the fire to cover her extraction. And now, 20 years later, she was holding hands with a monster. Which meant the woman in my kitchen, the woman currently making tea and offering me ice packs, had a sister she either didn't know about or was conspiring with. I grabbed my phone to text Leo, but my hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Leo, do not approach them. The man is dangerous, and the woman, she might be a ghost. I hit send. Then I looked at the door. I wasn't locked in here for my safety anymore. I was locked in here with a stranger who wore my daughter-in-law's face. I'm Elena Vance, 54, and I spent 20 years as an investigative journalist chasing down corruption before retiring to open the city's most successful boutique art gallery. I sat in my office, the glow of the monitor illuminating the sweat beading on my forehead. The file on Katerina Volkov, the dead twin, was still open on my screen. I needed physical proof. Digital records could be forged, but physical evidence always left a trace. I pulled up the security feed from the kitchen on my phone. Maya was moving. She set down the tea towel and picked up a wicker basket. She was heading for the French doors that led to the herb garden. She needed mint for the tea. Perfect, I whispered, my voice sounding ragged in the empty room. I watched her step outside, the sunlight catching the highlights in her hair. She looked so normal, so domestic. She drifted toward the basil and mint planters at the far end of the yard. I didn't hesitate. I unlocked my office door and slipped into the hallway. My socks slid silently against the hardwood floors. I felt like a burglar in my own home. My heart wasn't just beating, it was vibrating against my sternum, a frantic hummingbird trapped in a cage. I took the stairs two at a time, ignoring the protest of my knees. The guest suite was at the end of the east wing. Leo and Maya always stayed there when they visited from the city. I reached the door and pushed it open. The room smelled like her. Lavender and expensive vanilla. It was a scent that used to comfort me, reminding me that my son had found a good woman. Now it smelled like deception. I scanned the room. The bed was made. Leo's duffel bag was thrown carelessly in the corner. Maya's luggage, a set of cream-colored vintage leather suitcases, was stacked neatly by the vanity. I dropped to my knees beside the largest case. "Forgive me, Leo," I muttered. I unzipped the main compartment. Clothes were folded with military precision. Silk blouses, cashmere sweaters. I dug my hands into the layers, feeling for anything hard, anything heavy that shouldn't be there. Nothing. I moved to the vanity case. It was a rigid box, heavy and locked. I didn't have the key. I looked around the room frantically. My eyes landed on a nail file sitting on the dresser. I grabbed it. I jammed the tip into the cheap locking mechanism and twisted. It snapped open with a satisfying click. Inside, it was standard fare. Makeup brushes, foundation bottles, jewelry pouches, but the proportions were wrong. The inside of the case felt shallower than the outside depth. I ran my fingers along the velvet lining of the bottom. There was a seam that was slightly raised. I pressed down. It wasn't solid. I dug my nails into the velvet and ripped. The fabric tore with a sound like dry leaves being crushed. Hidden in the false bottom was a sleek black burner phone and a set of silver keys. My breath hitched. The keys had a yellow plastic tag, U-Store IT, Unit 404. I grabbed the phone. It was dead. I tossed it onto the carpet and reached back into the tier. My fingers brushed against paper. I pulled out a passport. It was blue, United States of America. I flipped it open. Maya's face stared back at me. The name was correct, Maya Vance. But when I thumbed through the pages, the world tilted on its axis. Entry London Heathrow. 14 Oct. Exit London Heathrow. 17 Oct. My blood ran cold. October 17th was 3 days ago. 3 days ago, Maya and I had gone to the flower market in the morning. I had receipts. I had photos of us on my phone. We had bought hydrangeas for the centerpieces. If Maya was with me, she couldn't have been exiting London. I stared at the ink stamp. It wasn't a forgery. I knew what fake stamps looked like. I had exposed a trafficking ring in '98 that used them. The ink bleed, the pressure marks, this was real. This passport had traveled, which meant the woman downstairs, the woman picking mint in my garden, was not the person using this passport. Or worse, they were passing this document back and forth, sharing a single legal identity to cover the movements of two separate people. One stays home to play the wife, the other travels to do what? Meet Julian Vane, launder money, kill? I shoved the passport into the waistband of my slacks. I needed to get out of here. I stood up, my knees cracking, and turned toward the door. A flash of movement caught my eye. The guest room window overlooked the back garden. I froze, slowly, dread pooling in my stomach like lead. I turned my head to look outside. Maya was standing in the middle of the lawn. She wasn't picking herbs. The basket was on the grass at her feet. She was standing perfectly still, her hands hanging loosely by her sides. Her head was tilted back, looking directly up at the second-floor window. Looking directly at me. The sun was bright, but I could see her face clearly. The sweet, concerned smile from the kitchen was gone. The brow furrowed with worry was smoothed out. Her expression was completely void of emotion. It was a blank canvas, a doll's face. She didn't wave. She didn't look surprised to see me rifling through her room. She just watched. Then slowly the corner of her mouth twitched up, not into a smile, but into a smirk. A cold, knowing smirk that didn't reach her eyes. She raised one hand to her ear, tapping it twice, mimicking a phone call. My hand flew to my own pocket where my phone lay silent. She knew I was up here. She knew I was talking to Leo. I stumbled back from the window, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. I wasn't the hunter anymore. I was the prey, and I had just walked into the trap. I'm Alina Vance, 54, And I used to think my career as an investigative journalist was dangerous. But that was before I realized the biggest threat to my family was standing in my own garden. I walked out the French doors, the glass sliding open with a heavy whoosh that sounded too loud in the quiet afternoon. The burner phone I had stolen from the guest room felt like a lead weight in my pocket, dragging down my slacks. My hand was sweating around my own cell phone, clutching it so tightly my knuckles were white. Maya was waiting for me. She stood by the hydrangeas, her back to the house, the garden shears dangling loosely in her right hand. The afternoon sun beat down on her hair, illuminating the same honey blonde highlights I had complimented just yesterday. I stopped 5 feet away from her. The grass was soft under my shoes, but my legs felt like they were made of concrete. "Turn around," I said. My voice was low, shaking with a mixture of rage and terror. She turned slowly. There was no confusion on her face, no sweet daughter-in-law concern. Her expression was a blank slate. I held up my phone, the screen displaying the photo Leo had sent from the plane, the photo of the woman in first class, the woman who wore Maya's face. "Explain this," I demanded, thrusting the screen toward her. "I found the passport, Maya. I found the burner phone. I know about Katerina. I know she didn't die in that fire." I braced myself for the lie. I expected her to cry, to gasp, to tell me I was having a breakdown. I was ready to dismantle her denial piece by piece, but she didn't deny it. Maya looked at the photo of her twin sister holding hands with a stranger. She tilted her head slightly, studying the image with clinical detachment. Then she sighed. It was a long, bored sound, like a teenager asked to take out the trash. "Leo really needs to learn to mind his own business," she said. The sound of her voice made my blood run cold. It was deeper than usual. The cadence was different, sharper, stripped of the bubbly warmth she used when Leo was around. She turned back to the bush and snipped a dead leaf. "Snip. You're admitting it," I choked out. "You're admitting you have a twin, that you've been lying to my son for 3 years." "We haven't been lying, Alina," she said, not looking at me. "We've been efficient." She set the shears down on the stone retaining wall and wiped her hands on her jeans. "Katerina and I have a complex portfolio of investments," she continued, her tone conversational. "Maintaining them requires a presence in multiple cities. We found that swapping lives was the most effective way to manage our time. One handles the business in London or Zurich, the other handles the domestic front here." My mouth fell open. "The domestic front? You mean my son?" "You talk about him like he's a part-time job." "Leo is a very demanding man," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "He wants a perfect wife. He wants someone who is never tired, never moody, always available. Between the two of us, we give him exactly what he wants. He's happy. Why ruin that?" "Because it's psychotic," I yelled, stepping forward. "You are sharing a legal identity. You are sharing a husband. Which one of you did he marry? Which one of you is standing here right now?" She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a predatory baring of teeth. "Does it matter?" she asked softly. She took a step toward me. The smell of lavender hit me, the same scent from the guest room, but now it felt cloying, suffocating, like funeral flowers. "I need to call Leo," I said, backing away. "I'm telling him everything." "I wouldn't do that," she said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't lunge at me. She just stood there, perfectly still, with that terrifying emptiness in her eyes. "The man in the photo," she said. "Julian, he's very protective of our operation. The London transfer is happening tonight and Katerina is currently securing the assets." She checked her watch, a watch I had given her for her birthday. "Right now Leo is at Heathrow waiting for his luggage," she said. "Julian has 3 associates at the terminal. They are watching him from the mezzanine." My heart stopped beating. The world narrowed down to her face. If you make that call, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, or if you try to leave this house before I give the signal, Julian makes a call of his own. She stepped closer, invading my personal space, her eyes boring into mine. You're a smart woman, Alina. You used to investigate cartels. You know how accidents happen in busy airports. I couldn't breathe. My lungs were frozen. Don't touch him, I whispered. Then give me the phone, she said, holding out her hand. The burner, and yours, now. I looked at her hand, then at her face. I realized with a sick, sinking feeling that I truly didn't know which sister was standing in front of me. And I realized she was perfectly willing to kill my son to keep their secret. I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I just realized my son is trapped at 30,000 feet with a woman who might be an international criminal using his wife's face. My phone buzzed against my sweaty palm like a trapped hornet, breaking the suffocating silence of the garden. I looked down at the screen. Leo, the woman standing by the hydrangeas, the one wearing my daughter-in-law's face, didn't lunge for the device. She didn't try to snatch it. She just tilted her head, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips as if she were watching a mouse scurry into a maze with no exit. Answer it, she whispered. Her voice was ice. Let's see where he is. My fingers trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. I swiped accept and pressed it to my ear. Leo, I choked out. Leo, where are you? Mom, he whispered. His voice was a panicked stammer, breathless and thin. Mom, I did something crazy. My stomach dropped through the floor. Leo, please tell me you're at the airport bar. Please tell me you're on the ground. I couldn't let them go, he said, the sound of a jet engine humming loudly in the background. I bought a ticket, Mom. It cost a fortune, but I had to know. I boarded the flight to Zurich. I felt the blood drain from my face. The world started to spin. You're on the plane, I screamed, forgetting the woman standing 5 feet away from me. Leo, you have to get off. You have to alert the flight attendants. I'm 3 rows behind them, he hissed. I'm in 4A, they're in 1A and 1B, they haven't seen me yet. I'm wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, but Mom, it's her, it's Maya. I can see the birthmark on her neck. It is not Maya, I yelled, turning my back on the woman in the garden to shield my voice. Leo, listen to me very carefully. The woman you are looking at is not your wife. Maya is here. She is in my garden right now. There was a silence on the line so profound I thought the call had dropped. What? Leo breathed. That's impossible. She's right there. It's a twin, Leo, I said, the words tumbling out of me like vomit. Her name is Katerina. I found the passport. I found the burner phones. They've been switching places. They've been playing us for 3 years. A twin? He sounded like he was in shock. Mom, that's insane. Look at her, I pleaded. Look at what she's doing. Leo paused. I could hear rustling on his end. She put a briefcase on the tray table. The man, Julian, he's looking around nervously. She just opened it. What is it, Leo? What's in the case? It looks like drives, Leo whispered, his voice trembling with a new kind of fear. Hard drives, dozens of them. They're glowing blue, and there are stacks of cash. Mom, this isn't an affair. She's plugging something into the seat console. It looks military. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was way beyond a family dispute. Leo, you are in danger, I said, tears streaming down my face. You need to stay away from her. Do not engage. Do you hear me? Katerina is dangerous. The woman here, she threatened to kill you. Mom, she's turning around, Leo gasped. She's looking back. I think she senses. Click. The line went dead. Leo, I screamed into the phone. Leo, I looked at the screen. Call failed. I tapped redial frantically. Nothing, no signal. The bars on the top left of my screen had vanished, replaced by a searching icon that blinked mockingly. I spun around. The woman who looked like Maya was no longer by the hydrangeas. She had moved closer, silent as a ghost. She was standing on the patio stones less than 3 feet from me. In her left hand, she held a small, black rectangular device with two short antennas. A red light pulsed steadily on its side. A signal jammer. She held it up, showing it to me like a teacher showing a student a flashcard. Technology is so fragile, she said. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly steady. It really breaks down when you need it most. I stared at the device, then at her face. The mask was completely off now. There was no trace of the sweet girl who baked scones for the PTA. This was a soldier. This was a predator. What did you do to him? I demanded, stepping toward her, my maternal instinct overriding my fear. If that plane goes down if you touch a hair on his head. She laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. The plane is fine, Alina, for now. She slipped the jammer into the pocket of her cardigan, my cardigan, which she had borrowed last week. But Leo has seen too much. He was supposed to stay on the ground. He's complicated the itinerary. She took a step toward the back door, blocking my path to the house. What do you want? I asked, my hands balling into fists. I want you to sit down, she said, gesturing to the patio furniture. The game has moved to the next level, and if you want your son to land in Zurich alive, you're going to do exactly what I tell you. I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I just realized the wedding ring on my son's finger is actually the key to a multi-billion-dollar heist. Why Leo? I asked, my voice trembling as I gripped the arms of the patio chair. If you're these high-flying criminals, why marry a gentle architect? Why involve him? The woman wearing my daughter-in-law's face looked at me with chilling pity. She lowered the signal jammer but didn't put it away. Because Leo is the perfect mule, Alina, she said softly. Who searches the grieving husband, who suspects the boring suburbanite. She leaned in close, the scent of lavender now making me nauseous. The ring, she whispered. The platinum band we gave him. He thinks the inscription inside says, "Forever yours" in Gaelic. It doesn't. My stomach lurched. What is it? It's a sequence, she said, checking her watch again with a mechanical precision. Biometric encryption codes for the account Julian is accessing right now. Julian needs the physical ring to complete the transfer in Zurich. Leo unknowingly delivering himself to us on that plane is the most convenient thing he's ever done. I stared at her. My son wasn't just a passenger, he was the hardware. He was a walking authentication token. Now, she said, straightening up, I'm going to make tea. You are going to sit here and appreciate that your son is still breathing. If you move toward the street, if you signal a neighbor, Julian gets a text, and Leo falls out of the sky. She turned her back on me and walked into my kitchen, sliding the glass door shut behind her. She thought she had won. She thought stripping me of my cell phone and cutting the landline left me helpless. She saw a grandmother in a cardigan. She forgot I used to track cartels before I tracked cookie recipes. I waited 10 seconds, watching her silhouette move toward the kettle. Then I moved. I didn't run to the street. I stayed low, crawling behind the oversized hydrangeas, dragging my body over the cold stone pavers toward the rotting wooden shed at the bottom of the garden. My knees scraped against the stone. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I slipped inside the shed and pulled the warped wooden door shut, plunging myself into darkness that smelled of gasoline and old potting soil. I fumbled in the dark until my hands found the cold metal casing under a dusty tarp. My husband's Hallicrafters SX-28. A vintage shortwave radio. Analog, ancient, and completely immune to a digital cellular jammer. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely flip the toggle switches. The amber dials glowed to life, casting a ghostly light on my terrified face. I put on the heavy headset, the leather cracked and peeling against my ears. I spun the dial, searching for the frequency I hadn't used in 15 years. The static hissed and popped, a chaotic ocean of white noise. "Come on," I whispered, sweat dripping down my temple. "Come on, Marcus." I keyed the mic. "Break, break," I said, my voice low and steady, slipping back into the cadence of my old life. "This is Sierra Echo Vance, requesting immediate contact with Handler 49, priority red." Static, then a crackle. "Station calling." A male voice cut through the noise. It sounded tinny, distant, but it was there. "Sierra Echo Vance," I repeated, clutching the mic so hard my knuckles turned white. "Marcus, it's Alina. I need a trace on a flight, and I need an ID on a target." "Alina." The voice lost its official detachedness. "Good God, you haven't been on this frequency since 08. Are you safe?" "No," I said. "I'm compromised. My son is on flight 404 to Zurich. He is sitting 3 rows behind a man named Julian. Late 40s, expensive suit, pockmarked skin on his right cheek. Traveling with a woman who looks exactly like my daughter-in-law." There was a pause, just the hum of the atmospheric interference filling the shed. I looked through the cracks in the shed door. I could see the woman in my kitchen holding a mug, staring out at the empty patio chair. She hadn't realized I was gone yet. "Alina," Marcus's voice came back, and it had dropped an octave. It was cold, heavy. "What is it?" I asked, my blood running cold. "The description matches Julian Kovic," Marcus said. "We lost track of him 3 weeks ago." "Is he a thief?" I asked, watching the kitchen door slide open. The woman stepped out, her eyes scanning the garden. "He's a cleaner, Alina," Marcus said. "He's wanted for the murder of a journalist in Prague last month. He strangled him in a first-class cabin." The air left my lungs. "He kills on planes?" I whispered. "He specializes in closed environments," Marcus said. "If your son is on a flight with Kovic, he is in a room with a tiger." Outside, the woman took a step off the patio. She looked toward the bushes. She looked toward the shed. "Alina," Marcus said urgently, "do not engage. We are contacting Swiss authorities, but they can't board a plane in mid-air. You need to keep the situation on the ground stable." "I can't," I breathed. "She's coming." The shed door handle rattled. I didn't turn off the radio. I didn't hide. I grabbed the heavy metal wrench hanging on the pegboard next to me. Julian Kovic was a tiger, but he had no idea what a mother bear would do to save her cub. "I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I used to dismantle international drug rings for a living, but nothing prepared me for the terror of hunting down the woman pretending to be my daughter-in-law." The shed door handle rattled violently. The wood groaned under the pressure. I gripped the heavy iron wrench with both hands, my breath coming in shallow, silent gasps. "Alina," Katerina's voice drifted through the cracks, dripping with mock concern. "Don't make this difficult. I know you're in there." "Julian just texted. He's getting impatient." I looked at the Hallicrafters radio. Marcus's voice had gone silent, but the channel was still open. I needed to get to the airport, but first I had to neutralize the threat standing in my garden. I didn't hide. I didn't cower. I kicked the rotting door open with every ounce of strength I had left. It swung outward, catching Katerina squarely in the shoulder. She stumbled back, the signal jammer flying from her hand and skittering across the patio stones. "You bitch," she hissed, her composure shattering. She reached for her waistband, a gun, definitely a gun, but I was already moving. I didn't run away, I ran past her, straight for the back door of the house. "The codes," I screamed over my shoulder, feigning panic. "I hid the real codes in the wine cellar, just take them and leave Leo alone." It was a gamble, a massive one. But greed is a predictable flaw, and Katerina was greedy. She scrambled up, ignoring her fallen jammer, and chased me into the kitchen. I sprinted through the hallway, my socks slipping on the hardwood, and threw open the heavy oak door to the basement wine cellar. I fumbled with the keypad on the wall, deliberately punching in the wrong numbers twice to make the panel beep loudly. "I can't open it," I cried, backing away as she stormed into the hallway. "The safe is in the back, behind the Merlots. Please just take it." She pushed past me, her eyes manic, gun drawn now. She descended the first 3 steps, scanning the dark room below for the imaginary safe. "Where is it, Alina?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the concrete. I didn't answer. I slammed the solid oak door shut with a thunderous boom and threw the heavy iron deadbolt home. "Alina!" she screamed, pounding on the other side. "Open this door, Julian will kill him." I leaned against the door, gasping for air, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I reached up to the security panel and punched in a specific sequence. DRS, silent alarm, police dispatch. The keypad turned red. The cops would be here in 10 minutes to collect the trash. I didn't wait for them. I grabbed my car keys from the counter and snatched up my cell phone. With the jammer left in the garden, the signal bars flooded back onto my screen. I ran to the car, threw it into reverse, and tore out of the driveway, taking out my own mailbox in the process. As I merged onto the highway, putting the pedal to the floor, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. "Target update, Flight 404 diverted. Medical emergency reported on board, dumping fuel. Landing at JFK in 45 mins. Kavik is forcing the plane down, New York. They weren't going to Zurich. Julian was bringing the plane down early." He knew the timeline had been compromised. I weaved through traffic, the speedometer climbing past 90. The world outside was a blur of gray asphalt and red taillights. My hands were shaking so hard the steering wheel vibrated under my palms. "Siri, call Leo," I commanded, my voice cracking. 1 ring, 2 rings. "Mom," Leo's voice was a whisper. "Mom, the pilot just announced we're diverting to New York. Someone in first class had a seizure." "It wasn't a seizure, Leo," I said, my eyes darting between the road and the clock on the dashboard. "It's a distraction. Julian is forcing the plane down so he can take you off the board before you reach Swiss airspace." He keeps looking at me," Leo stammered. I could hear the hum of the engines in the background. "He's standing in the aisle now. Mom, he's talking to the flight attendant, but he's staring right at me." "Listen to me closely," I said, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic to hit the exit ramp. "When those wheels touch the tarmac, chaos is going to break out. Emergency crews will board. You need to unbuckle now, get your bag." "I can't, the seatbelt sign is on." "Leo," I screamed, tears blurring my vision. "Forget the rules, Julian Kavik is a cleaner. Once that plane stops, he doesn't need to be subtle anymore. He needs your ring and he will cut off your finger to get it." Silence on the line. Then the sound of a seatbelt clicking open. "I'm up," Leo whispered. "I'm moving to the back galley." "Good, stay out of sight. I am 20 minutes away. Do not get off that plane with the other passengers. You hide in the bathroom if you have to." "Mom," Leo's voice broke. "He's moving. Julian is walking toward the back. He sees me." My blood ran cold. "Run, Leo," I whispered. "Run to the back and lock yourself in the lavatory. Now, he's coming fast. He has something in his hand." The line went dead again. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and floored the accelerator, the engine screaming as I raced toward the terminal shadows, praying I wasn't driving to a morgue. I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I used to dismantle international drug rings for a living, but nothing prepared me for the terror of standing in an airport arrivals hall, knowing my son was seconds away from death. I abandoned my car at the curb of Terminal 4, ignoring the immediate shrieks of traffic whistles from the Port Authority police. I didn't have time to park. I didn't have time to explain. I sprinted through the sliding glass doors, the blast of recycled air and stale coffee hitting me like a physical wall. My lungs burned. My legs, stiff from the adrenaline crash of the car ride, pumped with a mechanical, desperate rhythm. The arrivals board flickered overhead. Flight 404 diverted ARRIVED. They were already on the ground. I pushed through a knot of tourists, my elbows sharp, my apologies non-existent. I scanned the signs. International arrivals. Customs exit B, that's where they would be. Julian wouldn't take Leo to a secondary location yet. He would try to walk him right out the front door, blending into the chaos of a diverted flight. He was a cleaner. He hid in plain sight. I reached the barrier, a sea of faces holding cardboard signs and bouquets of flowers. The noise was deafening, a roar of reunions and announcements. I forced myself to stop. I forced my breathing to slow. I couldn't be a frantic mother here, I had to be a ghost. I slipped behind a concrete pillar near the currency exchange booth, my eyes raking over the crowd. Then I saw him. Leo walked through the frosted glass doors. He looked shattered. His skin was the color of ash, his shirt collar unbuttoned, sweat matting his dark hair to his forehead. He wasn't walking, he was being marched. Behind him, close enough to whisper in his ear, was Julian. He looked exactly as Marcus had described. Expensive suit, pockmarked cheek. Dead, shark-like eyes that scanned the perimeter with terrifying precision. And beside Julian was the woman. My breath hitched in my throat. She was identical to the woman I had locked in my wine cellar an hour ago. Same height, same hair, same predatory grace. They were twins, the Kovac sisters, one to play the wife, one to hold down the home front. They had Leo in a pincer formation. Julian's hand rested on the small of Leo's back. To an observer, it looked like a supportive gesture. I knew it was a pressure point. One wrong move and Julian would cripple him before he hit the floor. They were moving toward the exit, steering Leo away from the main crowd, toward the quieter side of the transit lounge where the black town cars idled. I checked the burner phone in my pocket. I gripped the passport I had swiped from the fake wife's purse on my kitchen counter, the only leverage I had. I stepped out from behind the pillar. "Julian!" I screamed. The sound tore through the low hum of the terminal. Julian froze. He didn't flinch, he didn't jump. He just stopped moving, his head snapping toward me with mechanical speed. Leo's head whipped up. His eyes found mine, wide and filled with tears. "Mom, let him go," I commanded, my voice steady, projecting over the heads of the confused onlookers. I held up the burner phone in my left hand and the passport in my right. "I know who you are and I know who she is." I pointed the passport at the woman. Her eyes widened. She recognized her sister's documentation. "I have the drives, Julian," I shouted, lying through my teeth. "The encryption keys you were looking for in Zurich, I found them in the house. I have them right here, uploaded to a remote server." It was a bluff, a desperate, flimsy bluff. I didn't even know what they were stealing, only that it involved codes. But it worked. Greed flickered in Julian's eyes. He hesitated. For a split second, the professional killer weighed the value of the target against the value of the payload. "You're lying," Julian said, his voice smooth, carrying effortlessly across the gap between us. "Am I?" I challenged, taking a step forward. "Check your sister's phone." "Oh wait, you can't, because she's locked in my basement and I smashed her jammer." The woman beside him gasped, her hand flying to her earpiece. The crowd around us began to pull back, sensing the violence radiating off the man in the suit. A mother clutching a toddler scurried away. Give me the phone, Alina, Julian said, his hand sliding inside his jacket. Leo, run to me, I said, ignoring Julian. Now, if he moves, I gut him, Julian stated calmly. If you touch him, I press send, I countered, my thumb hovering over a blank screen. And every agency from the CIA to Interpol gets your full biometric profile and the location of your offshore accounts. Julian's eyes narrowed. He was calculating the odds. He realized he had lost control of the environment. I saw the shift in his posture, the subtle dip of his shoulder. He wasn't going to negotiate, he was going to eliminate the threat. Security, I screamed at the top of my lungs, dropping the spy persona and channeling pure hysterical panic. He has a gun, he has a gun. I threw the passport at his face. It fluttered through the air, a pathetic projectile, but it made him flinch. In that second of distraction, Leo shoved the woman away and bolted toward me. Stop him. Julian roared, abandoning his cover. He drew a suppressed pistol from his jacket, the dark metal glinting under the fluorescent lights. Screams erupted in the hall. The sea of faces turned into a stampede. Get down! I tackled Leo as he reached me, slamming us both onto the hard terrazzo floor behind a row of metal baggage carts. Pop, pop. 2 rounds shattered the glass advertisement board above our heads, raining shards down on us. Stay down, I hissed, covering Leo's body with mine. Sirens began to wail, echoing through the terminal. TSA agents and armed police flooded the lounge from every exit, weapons drawn, shouting commands that were lost in the cacophony of terrified travelers. I peeked through the wheels of the baggage cart. Julian was gone. He had vanished into the screaming crowd the moment the police appeared, slipping away like smoke. But the woman, the sister, wasn't as fast. I saw a heavy-set security guard tackle her to the ground near the sliding doors. She thrashed and screamed, kicking wildly, but 3 more officers piled onto her. I slumped against the cold metal of the cart, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Leo was shaking beneath me, his hands clutching my jacket. Mom, he sobbed, burying his face in my shoulder. You came. I stroked his hair, my hands trembling uncontrollably now that the danger had passed. I looked at the burner phone in my hand. It was dead. I kissed the top of his head, tasting the salt of my own sweat. I told you, I whispered fiercely. I'm not just your mother, Leo. I'm the only security detail you'll ever need. I'm Alina Vance, 54, and I thought saving my son from a hitman was the hardest thing I'd ever do, until the ghosts of my past kicked down my front door. I watched through the gap in the baggage carts as the chaos crescendoed into a symphony of justice. Julian, who had slipped into the crowd like a phantom, made a critical error. He underestimated the sheer volume of the response. As he neared the automatic exit doors, a wall of tactical gear slammed into him. I heard the distinct meaty thud of a body hitting the floor, followed by the shout, "Suspect secure! Suspect secure!" The woman, the one who had played the role of the terrified wife on the plane, was already face down on the linoleum, her hands zip-tied behind her back, her wig askew. It was over. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my lungs since 1994. Leo collapsed into my arms. He wasn't the confident tech entrepreneur or the doting husband anymore. He was just my little boy. He sobbed into my shoulder, his body heaving with the kind of primal release that only comes after near-death experiences. I gripped him tight, my fingers digging into the fabric of his sweat-stained shirt, reassuring myself that he was solid, warm, and alive. "I've got you," I whispered into his hair, rocking him back and forth on the dirty airport floor. "I've got you, Leo, it's done." But as the adrenaline receded, leaving my limbs heavy and my mouth tasting of copper, a strange unease settled in my gut. The victory felt wrong. It felt too easy. Julian Kovac was a cleaner. He didn't get caught in dragnets unless he wanted to be caught or unless he was sacrificed. A federal agent in a windbreaker approached us, helping me to my feet. Ms. Vance, we have a tactical team en route to your residence to secure the second accomplice. You said she's contained in the wine cellar? Yes, I said, my voice sounding hollow. Reinforced steel door, biometric lock, she isn't going anywhere. We'll take you there now, the agent said. We need you to unlock it for us. The ride back to my house was a blur of flashing lights and Leo gripping my hand so hard his knuckles turned white. I stared out the window, watching the familiar suburbs roll by, but my mind was racing. Why did Julian hesitate? Why did the woman in the house let me get the upper hand so easily earlier? We pulled into my driveway, which was already swarming with local PD and unmarked SUVs. The front door was battered open. The police had breached. Stay here, I told Leo, pushing him back into the leather seat of the federal vehicle. I need to see this. I walked up the steps, flanked by two agents with drawn weapons. The house smelled of gunpowder and drywall dust from the breach. My sanctuary had been violated. We moved to the kitchen. The door to the wine cellar, the heavy bank vault-style door I had installed for catastrophic emergencies, was closed. The red light on the keypad was blinking. Open it, the lead agent commanded. I stepped forward, my hand trembling slightly as I keyed in the code. The light turned green. The heavy bolts retracted with a mechanical thunk. I pulled the heavy handle. The room beyond was dark. I reached in and flicked the switch. Empty. My stomach dropped through the floor. The racks of vintage reds and whites were undisturbed. The chair she had been sitting in was overturned. But the woman, the identical twin to the one currently in custody at the airport, was gone. Impossible, I whispered. There are no vents. The walls are concrete. Then I saw the hole in the ceiling. It was small, precise, cut through the drywall and the subfloor of the master bedroom above. She hadn't gone out, she had gone up. She had been equipped with tools I hadn't checked for. Clear the house, the agent screamed into his radio. I ignored him. I walked into the empty cell, my boots crunching on plaster dust. That's when I saw it. Sitting on the small tasting table in the center of the room, right where a bottle of 82 Bordeaux should have been, was a single piece of cream-colored cardstock. I picked it up. My fingers felt numb, like they didn't belong to my body. The handwriting was elegant, jagged, and terrifyingly familiar. It wasn't the woman's handwriting. It was a man's. You chose the wrong son. The world stopped. The sound of the police radios faded into a high-pitched whine. My vision tunneled until all I could see were those 5 words. You chose the wrong son. My blood turned to ice. A memory buried under 30 years of denial and carefully constructed lies clawed its way to the surface. The hospital room, the crying, the poverty I had been living in before I joined the agency. I was 24, broke and alone with 2 screaming infants. I couldn't feed them both. I couldn't protect them both. I made a choice that had haunted my nightmares for 3 decades. I kept Leo. I gave his identical twin brother, Lucas, to a wealthy couple from Zurich. I signed the papers, walked away, and never looked back. I told myself it was for the best. I told myself Lucas would have a better life. I buried his existence so deep that even I had started to believe Leo was an only child. I looked at the hole in the ceiling, the woman in my house, the sister. She wasn't working with the Kovic ring. She wasn't just a thief, she was a soldier. Ms. Vance, the agent touched my shoulder. I flinched violently. The heist, the ring, the drama on the plane. It was all theater. It was all noise. The woman in my house hadn't been here to rob me. She had been here to confirm my identity. She had been here to deliver a message. Julian and the woman on the plane were just hired distractions, pawns sacrificed to keep my eyes off the real threat. I looked out the window at the car where Leo sat, innocent and safe. He didn't know. He had no idea that he had a shadow that had grown up in the dark while Leo played in the light. I crumpled the note in my fist, the sharp edges biting into my palm. "He's here," I whispered to no one. "Who is here, ma'am?" the agent asked. "My son," I said, my voice trembling with a terror I hadn't felt since that day in the hospital. "The one I threw away."